Welcome back to the Al and Nathan Show, everybody. Right now, joined by Bob Weiner, Democratic strategist, columnist, and former communications director for Clinton drug czar General Barry McCaffrey. Bob, thanks for being here. How are you today?
I feel impending doom. I'm just quoting Rochelle Walensky. Sorry, Joseph. Hi, how are you?
That's fine. Well, I'm doing all right. Thanks for asking. So, I don't live in Baltimore, so that's why I'm doing all right. I'm just reading this headline here from NBC News. Baltimore will no longer prosecute drug possession, prostitution, low-level crimes.
Right. You know, it's not the first time around. You told me you wanted to talk about this today, and I'm glad. You know, Kurt Schmoke was mayor from 87 to 99, and that was his policy. And what could possibly go wrong now? O'Malley, the governor, I think I told you this, had a private conversation, but, after a while, privacy becomes open in government. So what the heck? Here we go. I'll make a little news. Governor O'Malley, who was governor from 2007 to 15, said he knew that legalization would create chaos and hospital emergency room cases and more emergency rooms and addictions and car crashes. But there wasn't anything he could do about it because the youth vote was so powerful. Democrats have been in denial on drug policy. And what could possibly go wrong with legalizing some drugs in Baltimore? They already have the worst heroin in the country, the highest my staff told me this. You're going to like it. I guess it makes good radio. The highest gonorrhea, the highest STDs in the country. And what could possibly go wrong with more legalization of drugs?
Wow. And they would have certainly learned their lesson from when they did this during the 90s, that the results would have definitely been noticed.
And they are. And you did a report a couple of weeks ago that showed what I put into the Washington Post about the 30+% increase in car crashes, hospitalizations, and addictions in the states that claimed there was no data. But then you go into the Stanford and JAMA, Journal of the American Medical Association study that showed all those numbers in states that have legalized. So this is not an unknown quantity. This is a known quantity in the over half of the states that have legalized either medically or recreationally marijuana, or in the case of Oregon, other drugs. There's, as I said, as Rochelle Walensky said about what she now sees on COVID, I feel impending doom.
So, it seems like people of Baltimore smartened up, at least in the 90s, and ousted that particular mayor. Not from Baltimore, so I don't know the exact particulars. It could have been something entirely different. But do you see history repeating itself? They try this experiment, and then, 10 years down the line, suddenly they realize this is horrible and we need to crack down?
It's like Laetrile in the 70s, which was going to be the great cure for cancer, except it turned out to be nothing but apricot pits. That's exactly what marijuana is going to be, because they never do the end science comparison with other real treatments for illnesses. And so you've got the medical people saying, there's anecdotal evidence. Well, yeah, that's great. That's useless. And again, unless you do an end comparison to what morphine provides you or what other things that are done under legal prescriptions, even cocaine, which is used for eye stuff, legally, unless you do an end comparison to those, you got no data. You got nothing. And that's what the legalizers want. It's a big industry, Joseph. It's totally a big industry. It's big pot that wants to do what tobacco did in terms of sales.
Yeah, it just seems like also in this the prosecutor's mind, other drugs seem to be under this blanket ban on prosecutions as well, not just marijuana. Right. Which is particularly disturbing, because as much as the pot the pot legalizers give pot a pass, none of them really seem to be giving cocaine or crack or the harder drugs a pass.
Right. Well, I was on Bill Maher and debated this issue, and he said to me, you can make the case that sugar it takes you to other drugs, because people make the case that marijuana takes you to other drugs. That's not the issue. The issue is that you can't make the case that marijuana does lead to other drugs. You cannot make that cause and effect, but you can make the case that virtually everyone who uses other drugs did start with marijuana and alcohol. And so that's where we are in this thing, is that you've got a connection into much worse things when you start with this.
Yeah, and given that slippery slope there, it seems legalizing every drug, as they appear to be moving to do in Baltimore, and as they did in Oregon, that just seems like a really horrible decision.
Right. And they will pay the price. As Governor O'Malley told me, they conceded, but they didn't want to do anything about, because denial on people who want to legalize, you're losing Democratic votes, is a political problem. But you got to be in the real world, and it looks to me like the Senate will not legalize. The votes simply aren't there. They're not going to crash the filibuster to go to 60, so it can be a 51. And I don't even know if they'd get to 51 on legalizing in the Senate, even though the House has passed some forms of legalization. So this is a national problem in the making. And, you know that I'm really progressive on a lot of issues, but this isn't one of them, for the simple reason that I learned something by being the spokesman for the House Narcotics Committee and then the White House Drug Office. And even though when I was in my first job in Washington was Ed Koch's legislative assistant when he was a liberal, and he wrote the bill to legalize drugs, and I wrote a for him saying there's no harm to anybody but yourself. But then, when you look at the numbers for the medical implications, and the history in hospitals and nursing homes, hospitals and car crashes and addictions, then you actually got to learn from the data, and so objectively, I've made a reversal of my earlier position that I did from a know-nothing indicator and played along with it. It's good party talk to talk about legalization, but it really is an awful thing for society and medical usage.
Yeah. Now, what's your take on this? I just saw this well after I called you about being on the show today. Washington State, the state-level Supreme Court ruled that the state's felony drug possession law was unconstitutional. That would be basically, if you're caught with a drug on you, you can't really use the defense, I didn't know it was there.
I'd have to read it. So it means that you can't say that I didn't know that it was illegal. Is that what they're saying?
Oh no! What the law was that if you're caught with drugs on you, you would be convicted of a felony even if you claimed you didn't know you had drugs on you. Like if they found 8 ball of cocaine in your house, for example, and you said I didn't know that was there, that wouldn't be a defense. They declared that unconstitutional, though.
So you can now say that's a defense.
Right.
Well, if it's true, it's all a matter of the facts. If you really didn't know and somebody planted it there, cops plant stuff. So you got to be able to make that case. And I'm also not against drug courts, by the way, as a policy. That's a terrific thing. Drug courts instead of imprisonment. We started with about 8 of them when I was the spokesman under Drug Czar McCaffrey, and now there's like 3,000 of them around the country. Those are very good strategies for people instead of sending them to jail. I mean, I'm for all of that. I'm for treatment, education, prevention. Those are good policies. I think, nobody also, this is the other side of it. You got to be rational on this. Nobody's against an old guy who's got cancer who lights up marijuana and wants to do it for his own psyche or if he thinks it's actually going to help him. If that's where you're going when you've got cancer and you're in pain, nobody wants to say that's illegal either, or at least by way of non-enforcement. So there's got to be a rational drug policy that balances education, prevention, treatment, rehabilitation, law enforcement, and foreign policy. As a result of that overall national drug strategy, there has been a 40% reduction in recreational drug use in America since the highs of, no pun intended, of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. It's down by nearly half. And if you said any other illness, whether it is cancer or diabetes or homeless, which isn't a disease, but homelessness or illiteracy, were cut in half, would you call it a failure? So the people that say the drug war is a failure, they're basically full of it. The numbers don't show that it's a failure. In fact, they show quite radically that the national team effort has succeeded.
Okay. Yeah, this thing in Washington State, I just brought that up because according to this Newsweek article, it's looking like people are just trying to, like right now, drug possession, I guess, technically isn't really a crime after they got rid of the bill. You can always just say, I didn't know it was there. But,
No,
and
you
saying
can't
that,
always say that. You got to prove it, and it's got to be factual. It can't just be an excuse. Geez, the excuses in this Chauvin trial by this guy, they're just ludicrous. Everybody saw the video and knows that he intentionally and maliciously killed the guy. So they can try all the excuses they want, but he killed the guy. So you got to be factual in these things.
All right, Bob Weiner, we'll have you stick around until after the break. Thank you for being with us today. Listeners, thank you for joining us well. As I just asked our guest, I hope you stick around as well.